this one is quite poor as well. So much so you can see a shadow in this area here, which is where the rear axle carrier panel has actually been dented and it's gone upwards because it's only 1.2 millimeters thick, and the bush contact pressure points have been bending the panel, which is also what's helping it crack like that. So the really nice part is coming up now, where we've carried out the sprayable seam sealer and also the top coat colouring. Here's the start of another Redish Motorsport E46 RACP Repair and Reinforcement process. This is an E46 M3 2002 with 75,000 miles on it. It's a coupe model with SMG transmission. And we've carried out the strip down process already. This car has already been to us for the Redish Motorsport RACP check and report, which is where we get the car in. First of all, to do an initial assessment to see how bad, how many cracks are present, how many spot weld issues there are, how much corrosion there is, and any other items that need replacing whilst the car is stripped down. So this customer, we've got to say a big thank you to, like with all of our customers, but this customer especially because he's driven from Glasgow to Bristol, which is a very long drive. I think it was about a 7-hour round trip, and he's done that twice now. Once for the RACP check and report about 2 or 3 months ago, and now a second time for the actual repair process. So really grateful of him travelling all this way to see us and for us to be able to carry out this process on his car. So we still need to do the degreasing part, which is what we're going to be coming up with shortly. This is just the initial first strip down, showing that the fuel tank's out, the axle, the prop shaft, heat shields, under trays, things like that. The shock absorbers are coming out next. There's a general road film on the car, which is what's present on every cars. Some have a diff or CV joint grease leak in that area there. They always tend to get a bit darker up at the back, where there's a lot more sort of airflow going through the diff fins at the back and then sort of hitting the boot floor scallop. But we can have a look at the cracks that we found first of all. Now we're going to take these out and show a bit closer later on, but it looks like this one could be a crack, which will be quite interesting because that's quite rare for the passenger side front, left front, to have a crack there. It might actually just be dirt, but it's not rubbing off very easy, so I think that one probably is a crack. We're bound to have a crack, semicircle one going around the mounting stud. And on the right hand side we've got a decent crack here as well. We've got the spot weld, which is cracked, which is the very typical one, which we always talk about, where the bushes are pressing or concentrating their energy onto those contact points there, and that one unfortunately presses on a spot weld, which cracks it. So we've got a crack going that way, semicircle one going around the mounting point, and another crack coming out there going to that spot weld. We've got a crack going this way and then up the vertical section up there, and then a branching one off to the left, possibly one, no, nothing in the middle, just that one there. Then we've got that one going towards the front of the car as well, and it's turning round and going up a little vertical fold just there, but it doesn't yet make its way to the other spot weld or the end of the panel. Then on the left rear, we've got definite crack from here up here. A couple of spot welds showing signs of movement, definite 2 spot welds up there showing signs of movement, and also breakages of spot welds up there. And then on the right rear, we also have a small crack there. This is an area that people sometimes miss because it's such a small one, and it's not that known that the right rears have cracks, but this one definitely has got a crack roughly between my fingers just there. So once we clean this up next, then we'll have a good look around and do an update video on the cracks and spot weld problems that we found. So the degreasing work is complete. Darren's done a lovely job of that into the wheel arches and all over the rear axle carrier panel, boot floor section, and into the fuel tank housing area up here, and the rear trailing arm pockets as well. So that's a really thorough degrease. That takes nearly 2 hours worth of work, and it's just all done with hand pressure cleaning agents and microfiber cloth. But it's really important so that we can see all the very small fine cracks that may be present around the mounting points, and also looking around the rear axle carrier panel perimeter and other locations for spot weld problems. For example, those two now really highlighted because they've sunk, or should I say the rear axle carrier panel is pulled this way, so they've got actually an area for dirt to be trapped in them, and you can see some corrosion lines in there as well. But we have got a really bad crack on the left front mounting point. What we thought was a crack was definitely a crack. That is quite rare. You don't normally see them this violent on the left front mounting point, but that spot weld's got several cracks going through it, and around it, and this one here has got a big one going all the way around that mounting point, and also one going then up the vertical section travelling north. And then going on to the right front, this one is quite poor as well. So much so you can see a shadow in this area here, which is where the rear axle carry panel has actually been dented and it's gone upwards, because it's only 1.2 millimeters thick, and the bush contact pressure points have been bending the panel, which is also what's helping it crack like that. So we've got a broken spot weld here, several spot welds showing signs of movement, a little crack coming out of that one, crack going around that mounting point to this spot weld. This is where it all starts from, this spot weld here on this panel, and then one going towards the front of the car, which stops nearly the edge of the panel, and the other one which is travelling vertical, and then another one going off to sort of 10 o'clock over that direction on clock face. Also a broken spot weld here. This is a 3-panel connection point holding the rear axle carry panel to the seat panel and also the right chassis leg inside the car. That one's definitely broken and it's also got some cracks moving on that one. So that tells us that the RACP is moving, or very slightly dropping. And then on the right rear, we've definitely got a crack there, the one that I pointed out previously in the video before we did the degreasing. Also maybe some signs of movement and cracks you can get out of these two vertical ones. For instance, that one up there looks like it's started to break. So that one will need to be investigated a little bit further. Movement on spot welds here, but no cracks coming out of those ones visually yet. And then on the left rear, which is arguably the most problematic area and sort of one of the first points of the whole panel that starts moving and breaking spot welds, over on this side panel connection up here, broken spot weld there, another one there, and another one there with a crack going through it. And then we've got the large crack which is around this section here, and also a crack coming out of that spot weld. The two up there that I talked about previously, which are going to need some work done inside the car, and also a seam sealer split along this line here, which tells us that this piece of corner of the rear axle carry panel is moving a little bit more than anybody would want, and hence why the spot welds are breaking and the cracks are starting to appear. So next up, we're going to start locating all the ends of the cracks and stop drilling them, so that we can make sure the cracks don't travel any further whilst we're working in these areas. And then later on we'll start looking at drilling out the spot welds that we've found that are broken or affected. And now the vehicle is completely prepared, covered, masked, so new cover for each vehicle. So this is why the vehicle's got a complete cover over it, which is masked to the perimeter underneath the car. But we're now working on the inside of the car. So here's an area where we're showing the doors are protected, all the seats and everything is partitioned off with specialist blankets, which are spark proof, weld proof, grinding proof, so nothing can get through those blankets that we've got. The vehicle is well protected inside, so obviously a lot of the items are already removed and stripped out, and then we have cardboard templates which protect all the headlining, the windows, because obviously the glass is still in the vehicle, so it's completely shut off to any sort of contaminants that we're working on, the contaminants that we produce whilst we're working on the car. So for example, we're now working on the rear seat panel, cutting two sections out, which we've already done, to access the cracked areas, stop drill them, remove the MIG welds that were cracked, and then reapply those MIG welds, and then weld the cracks, clear and paint the internal cavities inside where we've been working underneath the seat panel on top of the RACP. These are where the front upper MIG welds are, and then putting a weld through primer on the back of our Redish 005 plates, and then welding those onto the seat panel to close the cavity back off again. So basically this is the repair for the internal front section, and we've created a 20mm grommet hole in each location so that we can cavity wax these areas once we finish painting, and also they can be used for future bore scope inspections if anybody ever wants to. So that just shows you what we've done, or what we do on every vehicle inside, completely protected from any type of risk that we could possibly introduce whilst we are carrying out quite an extensive work inside. So it's cutting, grinding, welding, painting, spraying, waxing, lots of items of equipment need to be brought into the car to carry this out, and therefore a lot of care has to be taken to not only strip the vehicle but also protect it very thoroughly, so once the work is carried out, you know that when you unmask everything, nothing has been damaged whatsoever. So the internal section is almost complete. We are now going to be going into some painting on the inside to make a body coloured sort of finish on the inside to make it match as best as possible. how it was when it left the factory. So the cracks have been identified, stop drilled, recesses cut out around those front mounting points, and then also weld repaired, as have the spot welds that were broken or showing signs of flex or movement that were corroded has been taken care of. And as you can see, lots of the underside of the RACP is now bare metal, because that's obviously we've been working on that, preparing the structure around it. I'm just going to show you around the mounting points where we did have those serious cracks around that centre section, also coming out of that spot weld there, and also cracks going up this way. Those have been taken care of, and also this right front one as well. So that's completely taken a section out, first of all, we deal with, so that we make sure that the spot welds have been removed, and also the crack is not only being welded on top of, we're actually removing a section of cracked metal so that we've got the access to the platform above, which is then where we can plug weld and strengthen our connection between that threaded platform and the RACP skin, as well as repairing the cracked section of RACP at the same time. So those areas on those two front reinforcement mounting points have been dealt with. Remember, we had a crack in this section here, so that one has been stop drilled and then also welded and smoothed back. And the same with this left mounting plate here. We had a long crack going around this section, so it's been stop drilled and then also weld repaired and then smoothed back enough to allow the Redish V2 reinforcement plate to sit flat. In an ideal world, you'd want the weld repair to stay as high as possible, as well as being penetrated, obviously, but that would then hinder the Redish V2 reinforcement plate sitting flush against the panel. So we do need to smooth welds back so that we can then allow the plated reinforcement plates to go on. Also, these two spot welds that were broken up here were drilled out and then also plug welded to make sure that there was a thorough connection between those upper layers inside the car and also the RACP. So was this one here, because that one was cracked from the borescope camera inspection we looked at previously, as were these two here. So these two were spot welds. There's a line of spot welds going along here. This one and this one were showing signs of breakages, as also seen from inside with our borescope camera. So those two were taken care of by plug welding techniques to sort those ones out. And the side section panel here was also badly broken, with one spot weld there, one there, and one there, with a crack going up into the right angled return on the RACP fold. So those three were dealt with, and we've obviously carried out our trademark stitch welding process to join the two panels together. You see here, you can see still where it's an original two-piece overlap. So you've got RACP panel this side, and this upper panel here is the wheel arch panel. And whereas down here we've now got a complete join, and then it starts there again. So this is the sort of real problematic affected area. So years ago we realised that, and then we started putting a stitch weld technique in and smoothing that to a one sort of piece panel look, so that it gives far more adequate support than just 3 spot welds did. We've obviously got now 3 plug welds this side, but we've got a continued stitch weld all the way around that side, which just makes sense, that holds the RACP up in that area in a lot nicer way, really. So next we're moving on to a final spot weld which we've got to do. I just left it open to show you one that we're working on, and you can just about see the crack coming out. The spot weld is corroded, which tells us there's a crack in that area. There's one coming out to the left very slightly, and another one going out to the right up there. So that one will be dealt with next. And also we've done some stitch welds, brief, small little stitch welds just on the edges of the rear trailing arm pockets, because they always show signs of flex nowadays, it seems. And also this customer has opted to have a little bit more of extended paintwork. So we'd always obviously paint the RACP, blend out into the wheel arches and also the rear half of the vehicle, going right up to the rear panel. But this, people can opt to have extra work done. So battery tray wasn't too badly corroded, but it's nice to take care of that and take those brackets off, and also deal with the corrosion that was building up around the spring perches here, around various studs. So that's why you see areas that are bare metalled, and also the brake pipe brackets here, and also the fuel tank strap brackets. Now we do these in 2 versions. We can either do them in situ if they're not too bad, or we take them off. We were the first people to do that, and still continue to do that. If they're heavily corroded, we'll drill the spot welds out and take them off, aquablast them, put them back on, and take care of the corrosion around the back of them. Now these aren't deemed bad enough to do that, so these are being done in situ, as are various other items around the RACP. So this is the overlapping handbrake console panel, which goes up into the fuel tank area to sort of brace that front section. and all of the front forward fuel tank housing area, which is underneath the rear seat panel here, is in process of being worked on. So various items are in a bare metal and scuffed state, and we're just working on these two brackets next. These are the forward fuel tank mounting brackets. You can see this one still needs more work in this location here. Fuel tank rear trailing arm pockets have also been taken care of, as has any corrosion around the perimeter edges, like on this right hand side. This side, interestingly, is the MIG welded side, but you still get movement and stitch weld, MIG welds that shown signs of corrosion, as you can see by those darker, hazier cloud sections. So those areas that we're working on as well. So not too much more preparation to go, and then we'll be moving on to the Redish V2 reinforcement plates on the RACP 4 mounting points. So now we've got the Redish V2 reinforcement plates fully welded. That's around the perimeter, and also there's plug weld locations that we laser cut into the bottom of the reinforcement plates. So just looking at the left front reinforcement plate here, which goes around the perimeter, and obviously it's shaped and flattened off where the plug welds were carried out under here and here, here and here, to make it look visually pleasing but also strong. We obviously need to make sure that the plug welds are flattened on the underside, because that's where the subframe bush needs to sit up to, and also the stud needs to screw into. So here is the reinforcement plate, now it's fully welded, and also the right rear. So there wasn't much problem with this one, just a small crack around this side here, and you can see how this plate strengthens those cracked areas, because our sort of wings carry on the reinforcement plate, where others and original plates from years ago that people produced were just sort of square underside of the sections, but that's not really where they crack. It's on the edges and the folds of the floor, so they do need some extended, what we call wings, which are these ones up here. So this is the other one, the left rear, where we had quite a long crack going through this section up here. Also a plug weld, a spot weld broken behind there, two up there, which we've done, yeah, we're really pleased and happy with that. There's the inside of the back section of the RACP, where it joins the wheel arch panel, where we've done stitch welding fully all the way around, and the 3 plug welds which have been done and also dressed back, so they're ready to paint later on. That's worked out really well, and you can also see the metal looks a funny dull colour, and that's because we've treated it with POR 15 metal prep, which is a corrosion sort of neutralizing chemical, which converts any corrosion that it finds, tries to neutralize it to stop it growing anymore, and also coats the bare metal with a zinc phosphate finish. So the next layer of protection that we put on, which is etch primer, adheres to it much better than if it was just bare metal that we'd uncovered. And as you can see, going into the fuel tank area, these strap brackets, these forward strap brackets, have also been done for the fuel tank, and also all the way around any area that is suffering from surface corrosion has been scuffed, and also into the rear trailing arm pocket area that was showing signs of corrosion. Also the brake pipe and fuel pipe brackets were dealt with. These weren't bad enough to actually need to be coming off. These were just done in situ, but some cars we do need to take them off completely, but these ones weren't too bad. So that is pretty much prepared. Rear turrets have also been done again, and also any corrosion that was showing up around the on the boot floor section here, and also the battery tray bracket in this location here. We still need to do 2 more passes. There's 2 small little bits of corrosion that we need to attack on the rear grommets on that battery tray just up there. And then the area is now being perimeter masked, so it's initial first masking stage, and then we're going to bring the car vehicle mask down to the outside to meet this, so there's no chance of any overspray going anywhere. And then we'll be moving on to the the very first initial paint protection stage, which is etch primer, very shortly. So the primer stages have now been finished. So first of all, there was etch primer, which goes on the bare metal components that where we've done the metal prep. And then we do a high build primer, which is a slightly thicker primer, and that is a second coat, and that goes over the entire area. So over the BMW seam sealer, and also over our etch primer, first of all. That gives that uniform look all the way through the car. So remember, we're not just doing localized areas where we've carried out the welding process, we are doing the complete underside rear section, so very thorough finish, make sure that there's no corrosion, nothing loose, and that's right up into the wheel arches as well. So this car will be completely corrosion free at the rear end. Also battery bracket section, we took the corrosion out around those grommets, those final little bits that we noticed, and cleaned the threads up a little bit on the exhaust hangers. There's the right front reinforcement plate. The brackets here for the brake pipe and the fuel tank straps, they were corroded as well, as were this forward fuel tank in area, and also the rear trailing arm pocket section. Then moving round to the right rear plate, across the boot floor section where it connects to the rear axle carrier panel, and then also the left rear reinforcement plate as well. So all that's just dried, finished drying now, and we're going to move on to the sprayable seam sealer next. So the really nice part is coming up now, where we've carried out the sprayable seam sealer and also the top coat colouring, and now that's dried overnight, so nothing is rushed. We leave it to dry naturally, so we don't refit anything until it's completely dry. And now that's what you're looking at. It's the underside of the RACP, and now it's finished. That's how it's going to be left. It's looking really original with its sort of e-coat finish, which is what we have developed. A colour match which is very similar to how the BMWs finish or leave the factory. For example, here is the sort of standard BMW e-coat colour, and then this is ours. So ours is obviously on top of a textured paint, because we've done a textured sealer, sorry, because we've just done a sprayable seam sealer over the entire area, which is why you get that mottled sort of textured finish, which is durable enough to stop against stone chips and things like that, and obviously doesn't break down to normal waters or salts that get on there, but at the same time is smooth enough so that if anything does get onto there, splashes of water, rain and mud and things like that, it's extremely easy to wipe off because it's smooth. Even though it's got a texture, it's not hugely rippled like some sort of aftermarket seam sealers are, really heavily sort of floppy, but this isn't one of those. It's a very nice system. So the beauty of ours is that you can even still see the original factory spot weld, so you get to see it's not a hugely thick system, but it is very durable. And absolutely one thing that we always try and get across is it's completely dry. Nothing comes off. You can rub it until it starts squeaking. You can use your nail on it. Nothing comes off at all. It's a completely unique system. It's a very, very good, strongly adhered system. So we're looking at the left front Redish V2 reinforcement plate here. Also the right front. The two small spacer plates here that make up the push rod same height. Brake pipe and fuel pipe brackets that have been taken care of as well and painted fully. Also into the spring perch areas that, remember, we were suffering with corrosion around here, and also around the perches. Right rear reinforcement plate and also the left rear reinforcement plate. Two areas where we did plug welding up here, and then also our internal welds, 3 plug welds in that area on the side panel, and then our completed textured blending on this area here, just to finish off the wheel arch and protect. So the turret has also been dealt with because this customer wanted the full paint and protection of the rear end, so that's an extended one right out into the rear wheel arch area. Obviously all the boot floor section always gets taken care of right up to the rear panel, and also the battery box tray where we take these brackets off here and here and here. Then going into the fuel tank area as well, all of that area has been taken care of. We've now unmasked the areas for the fuel tank that we've talked about covering before. Fuel tank front forward strap brackets have been done. The boxes are now put back into position. That's where the brake pad and ABS sensors go into. And then we've got the rear trailing arm pocket area, which has also been taken care of completely. Looking at the back side of the reinforcement plate, this is the edge of the rear axle carrier panel where it's spot welded to the seat panel here. And you get to see all these original pressed sections of the chassis, which look absolutely fantastic. Even though nobody's going to see any of this, it's just nice to know that it's completely covered and protected. So even if you do get waters and mud sitting up on these ledges of the weld, it's completely sealed. You don't see any gap where any sealer hasn't got to. any of our sprayable seam sealer, so it's well protected for years to come. And then we just do a natural join to the underside of the chassis at this section here, so if anybody wanted to do the underside section going forward later on, they can do so by just joining up here. And arguably you wouldn't even need to take the fuel tank out, so it's quite a sensible approach to doing that, so it can be joined onto or added later on. So that is what it looks like underneath, and shortly we're going to go on to a cavity wax process, which is where we inject all the cavities with a special wax to protect it from corrosion in the future. So we're just starting to unwrap and unmask the interior. So the interior gets completely stripped back and down anyway. A lot of the headlining was protected, well, all of the headlining protected actually, all of the windows, the glass, anything that was still in here. And now we're just taking out the covers, all the protective fireproof blankets that were inside, and we're just starting to put the interior back together. And I thought I'd take an opportunity just to video now what it looks like before it all goes back together. Obviously none of this area will get seen because the carpets, or sorry, the leathers and the seat upholstery goes in this area, but it's just nice to know if it ever does come out in the future, it still looks all original and doesn't really stand out like a sore thumb that the area has been worked on. So, and that's because we take out the sound deadening material just across there, and also a triangle down here, also one that side and one on the top, so we can cut an access panel in the seat, one there and one there. We cut a square opening, and then we carry out the welded works inside the cavity on top of the front MIG welds for the RACP threaded receivers. And once that's finished and painted inside, then we weld on the Redish 005 reinforcement plates, which is that one there and that one there, and it's even shaped and folded to follow the contour or the fold in the seat panel. Then the area has a light dusting of paint and waxed, cavity waxed inside, and then also the sound deadening pads are put back on so it looks as original as possible. So that's just what it looks like before. Now we finish the work on the inside, and before we put it all back together in the front, in the interior with the seats going in next. The work's now complete on this E46 M3. So it's had the Redish Motorsport E46 RACP Repair and Reinforcement process. This is the one that we videoed live on Facebook in various sections over the past few days. And it's had the extended corrosion treatment and also paint protection for the rear end or rear half of the vehicle. Not that you can see much of it, because so much on the E46 is covered with heat shield through the centre and also fuel tank under trays, which mean that lots of it is hidden, but you do get to see some of the items, like part of the rear axle carrier panel here behind the diff, some of the boot floor section, also the battery tray area where we took off a lot of the corrosion on the brackets, and a whole area has been taken care of with corrosion wise. And you can see the car has been on road test, so we've got various little droplets which are actually water, but look how easy they move because they're not actually stuck. I know they're hanging underneath, but basically water seems to bead very well on this, so it doesn't actually collect, and very easy to clean, whether it be a microfiber cloth or even a hose or a jet wash. It cleans off very, very easy. Then we've gone all the way through the RACP, so you can see the new painted or seam sealed underside of the chassis, and that goes through right into the arches as well, because we took care of corrosion that was starting to build up above those shock absorber turrets, and right into the arches as well. And that's also on the left hand side, so it's looking fantastically finished. Like I say, really nice and easy to clean later on in life. And then all above the fuel tank area, which I can't really show you I'm afraid because it's well hidden by all the plastics and things, you just get a little bit of an idea up here behind the brake pipes. Trailing arm pockets have also been taken care of, so all of those areas are corrosion free now. Corrosion has been treated and then it's been resealed and painted, and also cavity waxed, extensively cavity waxed throughout the cavities and small little areas in the wheel arch, the pockets for the trailing arm connections, for example. You can just see the right front reinforcement plate there hiding behind the fuel tank filler neck, and also the left the left piece of rear axle carrier panel reinforcement plate, which is the Redish V2 plate, is nicely connected there, and you can see the weld lines, how smooth and unique and flat they look. So it looks very original, and hopefully we like to think very factory finished, if BMW were able to reinforce chassis, we hope that that's what they'd similarly look like. You can see some of the cavity wax which has been dripping still continuously, but we try and wipe off as much as we can of that so it doesn't show too much. You can see where it comes out here of the fluted sections of the boot floor where it connects to where the rear axle carrier panel connects to the boot floor. Now look at the curvature of that boot floor panel where we've overcoated it with our sprayable seam sealer. Look how thin and flat it is. So you can still see a slight texture on our seam sealer and also the BMW seam sealer, but you still get that really nice smooth shine, which you know it can be easily cleaned later on in life. So yeah, the work is now complete. We've also done front to rear brake pipes, genuine BMW brake pipes, which are the steel coated ones, which are going to last the test of time because we'll over wax those now as well so that they never corrode again in the future. A few small pieces done, a few little nuts and bolts and replacement pieces here and there. I do believe this customer is also going to be doing a refresh on the axle work themselves. They wanted us to do the corrosion and the structural welding work and reinforcement work on the panel because arguably that's the most time-consuming and specialist job, and then they're going to be having a bit of an overhaul themselves, I think, over a winter project, doing bushes and maybe refreshing some items at the rear end when they get the car back later on. So we're now going to take the car on our traditional 12-mile road test on varying roads to make sure everything's working and operating as it should be. We're also then going to carry out a four-wheeler digital alignment process and then also hand over to our detailing partner, Bears Detailing, who can then clean the vehicle before we're ready to hand over to the customer. So that's all the work finished on this E46 M3. We've carried out our 12-mile road test, done the four-wheel digital alignment, the brake fluid bleeding, and the car has just been cleaned by our detailing partner, Bears Detailing, inside and out. Just want to say again a massive thank you to this customer. We appreciate every customer that comes to us, but especially this customer who's driven so far from Glasgow to Bristol, which is a 7-hour round trip. A 7-hour each way, 14-hour round trip. He's done this twice now, once for the inspection, our RACP check and report, and then a couple of months later, here we are again, where he's come down on the replete visit for the actual repair work, the repair and reinforcement process at Redish Motorsport in Bristol. So he's used the handy link. We have Bristol Airport very close to us, within sort of a 10-minute drive, so we do free collection and deliveries from anybody using the airport. It's a nice touch because we really appreciate the level that some people go to travel to us. So the car is now ready to hand over to the customer, and he's going to head back to his home in Glasgow.